Some people will be out there reading their, like, you know, fluffy rom-coms. I will just be reading about cannibalism. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name's Chloe. If you are new here, then welcome. If you're not new here, then thank you for coming back. It means a lot to me. Today I thought I would film my May wrap-up. So this is a lot more chilled. We're not sitting by my bookcase this time. We're just, you know, chilling a little bit because I had a lesson today which was just a little bit, not stressful, just a little bit out of my comfort zone. It was just an uncomfortable situation as well. Like, it was very hot and physically uncomfortable. So when I got back, I was like, I want to do something to relax. And I don't know, I just, for some reason, I thought that filming a video was going to be a relaxed thing. I don't think it usually is, but we're going to try and go with it. And it's actually the 31st of May today, which, can we just take a second to appreciate the fact that I'm not filming my wrap up 2 weeks late. It's great. It's very great. I'm very happy about that. So we're just going to get into it. I don't want this video to be super long, so I'm just going to start. The first book that I read and finished in May was A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J Maas. I'm reading this as part of a read-along / buddy read with Hallie and Sarah, two of my very good friends. I will of course leave them linked down below. And we're basically just doing a read-along for the whole series. Well, not the whole series quite, the first 3 books in the series. So we read this and discussed it in May, and this was, as I said, the first book that I finished. I'm very happy that this was the first book that I read in May, because going into May my reading wasn't too great. So I was just very happy to, you know, read something fun and have people to discuss it with. I have all my thoughts in a spoilery ACOTAR vlog, so if you want to find out what I thought about this with all the spoilers, then go and watch that. For all you people that have not read ACOTAR but are still interested in hearing what I thought about it, my basic thoughts are, I gave it 4 stars, I really enjoyed it. There were definitely some problems and I can see that there's space for it to get better, but there weren't any sort of major issues that I had with it. I kind of just enjoyed it. And I think that was kind of what I was expecting, just because there's so many people that like it. So if it's got a mass audience, the chances are that it's just a very enjoyable book. And that's what I thought. The next book I read, I think, was All Boys Aren't Blue by George M. Johnson. I was so interested, so excited to pick this up, and it didn't disappoint me. I don't think I ended up giving it a rating. So the thing is, right, if I was going to give this a rating based on the writing, I would probably have to give it a 4 stars. I don't think, for me personally, the writing was quite good enough to give it 5 stars. But that being said, this is about someone's life, and I think that the messages in this book and the story, the things that this person has gone through, I think that, like, I personally could not put a star rating on that, because I just, like, at the end of the day, it's not about how they are writing, it's just about the things that they've gone through. There are trigger warnings, I believe, at the beginning of the book, which is absolutely amazing, especially because we know the sort of topics that are brought up in this, and I'm honestly just in awe of this person. So basically this book is on the front described as a memoir manifesto about growing up black and queer, and the things that the author talks about are to do with a lot of either about being queer and trying to figure that out, or about being black and what that means in the wider world, or the intersection. There's a lot to do with that intersection between being queer and being a POC, or being black, or something like that. Obviously this author is black, but I think that the things that they're talking about can also be transferred to people of, like, other people of colour, and especially if they sort of are on that intersection of being queer and being a person of colour. I don't necessarily relate to all the things that this person is saying and the way that they identify and things like that. However, there were things in here that, like, really struck a chord with me that I could relate to, despite the fact that our circumstances are so different. One of the things that the author really does say is the fact that their family has always loved them, and their family will always love them, despite the fact, or not despite, because it shouldn't be despite, but like, despite the fact that there's a lot of families that at the time of this person growing up would have been really homophobic and transphobic and just, you know, all the discrimination, all the phobias towards this person for the way that they feel and the way that they are and the way that they identify. This person constantly says that their family is supportive and they love them. They do mention the fact that, like, it's not their family that inflicts trauma upon them, and yet they still, because of who they are, experience trauma, and it has affected the way that they view their sexuality, the way they view their gender, and just coming to terms with it and being able to tell other people. And it took them so long to figure that out, and it's just a really, really interesting story, because it's not the typical, my family were homophobic and so I have trauma because of that. It's more a case of, my family loved me, and despite the fact that I grew up in a stable family, the fact that my family always loved me, there still were things that happened to me because of who I am, and that was just really interesting to read. Anyway, I'm rambling. As I said, I didn't give this a rating because it's non-fiction and because it's about someone's life, but I would 100% recommend it. It is one of the most powerful things that I've ever read. I listened to an audiobook. That was Every Heart Doorway, that's what it's called. Every Heart Doorway by Seanan McGuire, and it is the first book in the Wayward Children's series by Seanan McGuire, and I enjoyed it. I give it 3 stars. I think, once again, the experience of listening to it on audiobook was, I think it sort of took away from the actual story. I'm such a physical reader. Like, I love reading and having the books and being able to see the words. I think maybe I'm just not as much of an auditory person as some audiobook readers are. So I think it could have potentially been a 4-star if it weren't for the fact that I listened to it on audiobook. As far as the actual story goes, I really enjoyed it. Like, I think it's a really fun story, and I also really like the fact that they're like short books. And I'm really looking forward to getting to the next one and just continuing the series. I think we're going to go on to the next book that I read. Let's see, what did I read? I read My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix. I was so excited to pick this up because, if you know me, you know I love the 80s, 90s horror, cheesy vibes, and this delivered on all of them. If you think The Exorcist, like, this is very much The Exorcist in book form. However, instead of just following all the weird stuff that happens, we are following the perspective of the best friend of a girl who supposedly gets, what's it called? We are following the girl who is the best friend of another girl who, We're following the best friend of a girl who seemingly gets, oh my god, it's gone again. Possessed, that is the word. We're following the best friend of a girl who seemingly gets possessed by some kind of demon or spirit or something like that. They have a bit of an odd friendship, I'm not gonna lie. It was quite fun to read though. Have a bit of a weird friendship, and then something happens, a situation, and then the girl, she starts acting like really odd, like really weird things happen, as you would imagine if a person was being possessed. And her best friend starts to notice it, but no one else seems to notice it for some reason. They all take it as the best friend sort of, I guess, acting up and being rebellious or something like that. She keeps pointing out, saying, oh, there's something wrong and blah, 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 blah. And we basically just follow that. We're following up until the actual exorcism. I think it's a bit misleading because the book's called My Best Friend's Exorcism. I think the exorcism takes 50 pages or something like that. It's really not that long. But it's more so the story of someone seeing their best friend changing and then trying to figure out, what the hell do we do with this? Just sitting here thinking about it now, it's really interesting to just put it in that way, that it's about someone seeing their best friend changing, because that doesn't have to be because of possession. Someone's best friend can change just because, people evolve and people change and stuff like that. And it's just really interesting because, I've been through that before. I've had friends that have changed and, you know, eventually led to us not being friends anymore. But I think that it's a really interesting, like, at the end of the day, it's not just about an exorcism, it's actually about this person seeing her friend change and like being confused and not understanding and trying to tell people and people not understanding her. So it was fun. I gave it 3 stars. It could have been a lot better, not gonna lie. I think that Grady Hendrix's other books might be a bit better, especially the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. I really want to read that. The problem is that all of Grady Hendrix's books seem to be really expensive whenever I try and buy them. It will be a while before I get my hand on that one, but this one was fun. It was 3 stars. It was kind of like, so for me, I really enjoyed it. I just didn't give it more than 3 stars just because I don't think that it deserves more than 3 stars. It was set in the 80s. There were, so I believe that every chapter, the name of the chapter, like the chapter title, is actually the title of a song. Fun. I then picked up The Love and Lies of Roxanna, and that's by Sabina Khan. And the reason that I read this book is because one of my friends, Steph from Steph's Bookish World, was co-hosting a readathon called the Eliathon, and they do rounds, and the first round was to do with Islam and Eid, Ramadan, that kind of thing. And they basically had some different prompts, and I wanted to take part in it completely, but like I just didn't have the time and capacity to do that. So I picked a couple of books and decided to read them. And the first book that I read was this one, and this essentially follows a girl called Roxanna Lee who is gay, but she's also Muslim. She comes from a Bangladeshi family, so they're very traditional, and she's sort of grown up hearing people talking about gay people in a not so nice light, and she was like, I don't want to tell my family. Like, if I tell my family that I'm gay, they probably just won't accept it. Like, they'll be like, no, that's not possible. So she has a girlfriend, and her girlfriend, I wouldn't say puts pressure on her, but definitely is upset about the fact that she can't live her authentic truth. Long story short, she ends up getting caught kissing her girlfriend, and, you know, chaos ensues. There's stuff that happens. She ends up going to Bangladesh to be with family, and her parents maybe have ulterior motives, and things happen. And this was just, there's some really great characters in here. She has a grandmother who is honestly, I think, the sweetest old person I've ever read about. She is lovely. She honestly nearly made me cry. That's how nice her grandmother is. Her brother is also one of the best, most supportive brothers I've ever read about, so there was just so much going for this book. I gave it 4 stars instead of 5 stars just because, I don't know, I was feeling a bit grouchy. I was like, nah, I don't want to give it 5 stars. It could have potentially gotten 5 stars. Like, it's a really great book. I really recommend it, but apparently this month I just didn't want to give 5 stars. So this is another book that I read for the Eliathon. That is I Hope You Get This Message by Farah Nasrishi. I really love this book. Once again, I probably should have given this 5 stars. I gave it 4 stars. It's probably more like a 4.5 stars. It wasn't perfect, but it was really good. So, I talked about this in my last vlog. This is basically like an apocalyptic book where at the beginning of the book we find out that there is this species called this alien species from a planet called Alma, and they send a little message to the planet Earth that gets, you know, gets received, and it's basically saying that the human species has 7 days to, you know, live, and that at the end of those 7 days, the species on the planet Alma would then decide whether humans deserve to exist. So basically, it's the end of the world as we know it. This follows 3 different perspectives. It's the 3 people on the front cover, which is very, very convenient, isn't it? And basically they all have different stories, obviously. They all are very different people. We've got so much representation. I absolutely loved it. So there was, from what I can remember, right, we've got LGBTQIA+ representation, we've got Muslim representation, we've got mental health representation, both in the form of schizophrenia but also in the form of one of the main characters having struggled with his mental health in the past and currently struggling with his mental health. We have got representation of single mothers, of, you know, parents dying early on in a child's life, and that's what I can remember. But like, honestly, there's so much representation in this. It felt very true to life. Like, it felt very much like these characters were real life characters, and I really, really appreciated that. I really enjoyed the story. I liked the way that it was going. On the surface, this is obviously about finding out, are the human race, like, is the human race worthy of living? But once you get past that, you realise there's so much more to it. It's all about these characters and the sort of journey that they're going on, and the things in their lives that, you know, the hardships, but also the good things. So the last book that I actually managed to finish this month was Once Upon an Eid, which is a collection of short stories. I swear the last couple of days I've said this so many times. Basically, it's a short story collection full of stories that are about Eid and Ramadan, and the way that it's celebrated by different Muslims. And this was the group read for the Eliathon, and I really enjoyed it. It was really cute. I don't have much else to say, purely because I read it more so for the experience of it being a buddy read, like a group read, but also because I got a bit too excited when I saw it. When I saw the cover and everything, I was like, oh, I just get it. I just get it. Like, I didn't even think about whether I'd enjoyed it. I did enjoy it, and I would recommend it, but I don't think it's for everyone. I think that some people would maybe find it a little bit boring just because it is middle grade, but I thought it was really cute, and I'm happy to have read it. I think it's definitely the case of it's very good because it's short stories. If there's one day that I want to read a cute short story, I will flip to one of these ones and I will read it. I don't know if I mentioned, but basically I gave this no rating because it's a short story collection. I just wanted to mention roughly some of the books that I'm thinking that I might want to read in June. Definitely not. This is definitely not for definite. This is definitely not for definite. Wow. This sort of compilation of books is definitely not exactly what I'm going to read. I will probably end up only reading some of them, I think. But this is just roughly like ideas of what I might want to read in the month of June. One book that I know I for sure am going to read, because we've got a live show, which the date's still being figured out, but it is acmav, which is of course the second book in the Akatar series. I'm very excited to get to this, and this is supposed to be a lot heavier, a lot, you know, steamier than Akatar. So I will be vlogging it. You will see it at some point, and as I said, there's going to be a live show. I'm very excited for that. As far as like content on my channel goes, I really, really want to do a true crime kind of vlog style thing. So basically I want to focus on one true crime book and read it and sort of give my experience with reading that true crime book, but then I also want to discuss the whole situation, the whole story that's being discussed in that book. Like, I want to then say it in my own words for anyone that is interested in true crime. I personally am very interested, and I've always wanted to have a platform where I could sort of convey true crime stories, and I feel like it would be quite fun to bring it onto my channel. So I want to do that with one of these two books. So these are the only two books that I've got that are about true crime kind of things. And I say that because one of them is technically not a true crime book, and I'll explain why. The first book that I've got, which is definitely a true crime book, is Are We Gone in the Dark by Michelle McNamara. I have had this for a while and I just really need to get to it. This is about the Golden State Killer, who was active for quite a while, I think. He was a serial rapist. He ended up murdering a bunch of people over a decade, yes. So for quite a while in California, hence the name The Golden State Killer. Michelle McNamara was actually the person that coined the term The Golden State Killer, I believe, because before that he was called the Night Stalker, I believe, and this was before the Night Stalker that we know, I think. Because basically he was like the original Night Stalker. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I basically just want to read this book and then have a little chat about the Golden State Killer. This is a case that I have not read that much about. However, I have read a little bit in conjunction with a project that I did a while back, which was to do with DNA evidence and the fact that this person was eventually, I believe, apprehended because of DNA evidence. I think that's what it was, that they couldn't catch him for a very long time, or until they managed to use DNA profiling databases, stuff like that. The other book that I have, so I'll probably end up choosing between these books. So if you have any like preference, if you'd rather hear about that first one or if you'd rather hear about this next one, you're more than welcome to comment down below. This next one is more of like a history, like non-fiction book, purely because it's not focusing on the murderer, it's focusing on the victims, which is a very interesting perspective and one that we need when it comes to this case, because we've all heard about Jack the Ripper, but we have not all heard about the 5 women that he killed. So, this is the 5. I'm sure you've heard about this. This has been on BookTube for a while now. The 5 by Hallie Rubenhold. I'm just super excited to get to this. I heard a teacher talk about it way back when I was in college, which I'm not anymore. That project that I just mentioned was actually also to do with Jack the Ripper, so that's why I'm very interested in this. I might be able to drag my project into there at some point. That would be fun if I mentioned it in my video, but basically this book focuses on the 5 women that Jack the Ripper killed, and I still don't know which direction I want to go with my video, because I obviously want to be as respectful to the victims as possible and as true to this book as possible, in the sense that I don't want to read a book that is focusing so much on the victims and then only focus on Jack the Ripper in my video. So I'm still not sure what direction I'm going to go with it, but I'm very excited to get into this and just learn more about these women, because there's so many people, even people who, and like, this isn't me sort of trying to attack anyone, but like I think the whole point of this book is the fact that there is no historical evidence that all these 5 women were prostitutes. Even if they were prostitutes, it doesn't matter. Prostitutes isn't the word I should be using. Even if they were sex workers, it doesn't matter. But there are still people that, whilst talking about this book, refer to the 5 women. It says 5 women. While they were referring to the 5 women, they keep on referring to them as prostitutes, which is fine to a certain extent. But at the same time, the whole point of this book is that you need to see beyond the fact that they were potentially sex workers. There's not necessarily any sources that say that they actually were sex workers, and obviously if they were sex workers, that's fine, that's no reason for them to be killed. But at the end of the day, if you strip away everything, they were women. At the end of the day, they were women, and I think that's the whole point of this book. I've been talking about it for a very long time. Another book that I am very excited to read, and I think I probably will read it in June just because it's quite short and I'm also just so excited, is Tender as the Flesh by Augustina Bazterrica. Tender as the Flesh is pitched as a dystopia, but it's sort of, I guess, breaks the boundary and is a bit like dystopia horror kind of thing, because this is essentially about a world where cannibalism is legal and there's a whole system with like how you do cannibalism and blah blah blah, and that is because there is a plague kind of thing, like an illness, a virus that has basically infected all animals and means that any animal is inedible to humans and extremely toxic. The only flesh, the only meat that you can eat is human flesh. So it's very interesting. I think it poses the question of, like, are we so inclined to eat meat that we would go as far as eating each other? And by that synopsis, I guess the answer is yes. Also, I just thought, you know, cannibalism is nearly the summer. Like, I feel like cannibalism is definitely like a summer topic, like, you know, summer vibes. I mean, some people will be out there reading their, like, you know, fluffy rom-coms. I will just be reading about cannibalism because I am me. That was my wrap up and my June hopefuls. I hope that you enjoyed this video and I will see you in my next one.